Hi everyone, Kiss My Mic here. So, March Madness has finally arrived here in America. But if you didn't grow up here in the US or if you are from a different part of the world, then this video is for you because today we're gonna talk about March Madness. So, what exactly is March Madness? Well, to put it simply, it is a college basketball tournament that takes place throughout the entire month of March. So what's different about it is it has all the best schools, all the best universities and colleges from Division 1 competing all for the chance of winning that basketball championship. Think about your favorite teams or the schools that you went to, and then you're all competing for the glory of your school and for winning that coveted championship. You know, for Filipinos out there such as myself, we all know what competition is like, right? There's this universe that we always engage in and participate in. It's kind of like that. You know, over here in the US, there's just so much excitement because people are cheering for their favorite teams, even though they didn't go to those schools, right? So yeah, it's really exciting. It's so fun. So how can people participate aside from cheering for their favorite teams? Well, everyone fills out their brackets. Brackets is such a major thing over here. It's simply kind of selecting, you know, which one you want to predict as winners, and then based on that, you compare yourselves against a pool, whether it's amongst your friends, your co-workers, the internet, for crying out loud. It's all the excitement during this month. So how does it work? Well, it's a single elimination tournament. So similar to the knockout rounds at the World Cup for those of you football fans out there, or if you're into tennis, it's also similar to the elimination brackets at any Grand Slam like the Wimbledon or US Open. So, you know, for NCAA or March Madness in particular, there are 68 teams that compete at the beginning of the tournament. And then after that, we'll get to see the top 32 teams advancing to the next round, down to the top 16, also called the Sweet 16, if you've heard of that term before. So after the Sweet 16, there's also the Elite 8, and then the Final 4. You know, the phrase, you know, the road to the Final 4, you often hear that here in the US, you know, so leading up to the top 4 or the Final 4, and then ultimately to the championships where we get to see the finals between two teams and also the semifinals between the other losing teams. So that's really how it works. By the way, that 68 teams that are part of the tournament include teams that have won their respective conferences, and also there were others that even though they didn't win, they were selected by the selection committee to participate in the tournament. And so that's how it all starts. Also, the tournament is grouped into 4 regions. You got the West region, the East region, the North region, and the South region. All of this is really just a grouping. So basically, they have 16 teams that are competing in the West region, and then there are 16 teams competing in the East region, and so on and so forth. And so those 16 teams basically are ranked in the beginning based on their seeds. You got the top seed team as number 1, you got the number 2, the number 3, and then they are paired based on their seed ranking. So usually it's the top seed team competes with the number 16, the second seeded team competes with number 15, and so on. And so that is basically how the format works. Sometimes there are pairings where the 16th seeded team ends up beating the number 1 seed team. And that's usually the phenomenon called the Cinderella story. But in the history of the NCAA, the biggest upset, the most memorable Cinderella story actually took place in 2018 when the then 16th seeded University of Maryland beating the number 1 seed University of Virginia. So a little bit more about history. So the very first NCAA tournament took place in 1939. Can you imagine? That was 85 years ago. And during that tournament, the 2 teams that competed in the finals were Oregon and Ohio State, with Oregon winning the championship. If you want to remember who those teams were, think of O&O, 0-0. That's the starting score at any given sports event. OO, Oregon and Ohio State. Also, a little trivia about me. I went to a high school called Holy Cross in the Philippines, and then when I moved here to the US, I found out that there is a college also called Holy Cross, and guess what? They won the championship, NCAA Men's Championship in 1947. What are the odds, right? Also, another trivia, I went to a college in the Philippines called De La Salle University. Not to be confused with LaSalle, which is a college here in the US located specifically in Philadelphia. But LaSalle, the college here in Philly, also won the championship, the NCAA championship, back in 1957. There's a little history for you, so go LaSalle. Since I grew up in the Philippines, I wasn't really familiar with the whole college basketball shenanigan until I became a student here in the US myself. I went to UNC Chapel Hill for my master's, and so that's why I'm rooting for the Tar Heels. So speaking of the Tar Heels, yes, I'm rooting for them this year, but the other teams that are most favored to win this year include UConn, Purdue, and Houston, and those are the three top-seeded teams from the different regions. In terms of the teams that have won the most number of championships or tournaments, number one is UCLA with 11 wins total, followed by Kentucky with 8 wins, and then UNC has 6 wins already. After that, it's Duke, Indiana, and UConn with 5 wins each. So there you go. Happy March Madness, everyone.